Hey there, and welcome back to another Path of Exile 2 prep video. Here we'll be talking about crafting, what crafting is like in 0.2, what crafting will be like in 0.3, and just to show a little bit about PoE 1. Not that I've really played the game, but I'll show you a little bit there. If you want to skip the whole, 0.2 crafting tutorial and explanations, there's going to be a timestamp in the description, and it should show up on your video player. But otherwise, the goal of this is to give people some background on how to actually craft things. I know that the one time I ever loaded into PoE 1, it's like, oh, you see this item, and then you ask yourself, how do I craft it? And there's a reason that people say that PoE 1 has like super bloated crafting. So let's take a look at PoE 1. Or PoE 2, that might give a better example. Right now, these are the bows. Whoops. These are the bows the bow modifiers that you can get. And then you have a bunch like increased physical damage, hybrid, accuracy rating, LE, and then your flats, and then your suffixes here. In PoE 1, these are all the modifiers that you can roll on a bow. And now it gets really obvious why people get really confused. So hopefully, depending on, I plan to keep playing PoE 2. Every league I will try and do an update on how crafting works and how to use the new systems and existing systems together. So new players can come in and have some more information on that, especially if you've never crafted before. I've only dabbled a little bit on it, but I do talk with a lot of traders and crafters, and there's always people streaming their crafting like 9 Lives and Rake. So, without further ado, let's just go over the basics of crafting right now. And because I don't have any of these orbs, because I dumped everything, first we have the Orb of Augmentation. This is the transmutation. First, you have normal to magic item with 1 modifier. Just simple, you have a white item, you upgrade it to a blue, you get either a prefix or a suffix. The Aug will give you the opposite, so if you've got a prefix on it, or you have a magic item, you have a prefix, now you get the suffix, and vice versa. Regal takes that magic item, upgrades it to a rare, again, random RNG, prefix or suffix. You have Exalts to add more modifiers to rares. Chaos Orbs to randomly remove one of the modifiers on that rare item, whether there's 1, 2 to 6, doesn't matter. You can randomly remove one and add another one back, basically. You have the Val Orb for corrupting. This is where you get corrupted, like here, the +1 max frenzy charges. This is a corrupted enchant. You can also get overrolled or underrolled items, like this is an overrolled or called Krangle Divined unique pair of boots, so I have 24% when the normal max is 20%. Then you have the Orb of Alchemy. You take that white item and you upgrade it to a rare, 4 random modifiers. Divine Orb, most people will probably just think of this as a currency item that they just use for trade, but it is used in crafting or even just like endgame purposes. So for example, relics. I do a lot of Sekimus, which is probably obvious if you've been following for a while. And in Sekimus, you'll probably want to take your relics and maybe you want to div them. So I have, let's say, I'm just going to waste a div here. But let's say I have this 8% move speed. I'm trying to get 10% move speed, then you would divine the item. And now I have 9% instead of. So it's things like that. It will divine the item and basically re-roll the number that you get within the range that you have. It will not change tiers. So it's 7 to 10%. No matter how many divines I put in, it will only ever roll within 7 to 10% movement speed for this relic. So that's the Divine Orb. Then you have Orb of Chance. This is separate. I'm not really going to deal with that. Orb of Annulment removes a modifier. And this, again, could be important for... where'd that movement speed? I should have kept it out. It is. So let's say for crafting, I'm trying to keep the movement speed, but I don't like the quantity of keys dropped. You can annul, and now I opened up that suffix, and I can reroll that with an Aug. And then you can do that again. Oh, I lost the movement speed. Now it's garbage. So that's for annuls. And this can get used for high-end crafting a lot as well, which we'll talk about later. Artificers adds Ruin Sockets. Fracturing Orb. Fracture a random modifier on a rare item with at least 4 modifiers. So this is where you'll see these kind of orange modifiers. Fractured modifiers cannot be removed, cannot be changed. Meaning that once it's fractured on, it is locked in on that item. It cannot Chaos Orbit, cannot annul it, can't even divine it. So let's say it is a really important mod for me. So let's say I really wanted to keep this, but I wanted a higher roll. It's too bad, so sad. It is locked in at that 65% now. I cannot divine it, even if I wanted the 71. So Fracturing Orb will lock that in. And then you have the Mirror of Kalandra. This is to create a copy of an item. The mirrored items will retain all the same stats. If you have, let's say, amulets with Anoint, it will retain the Anoint, all of that. You cannot do any of these currency items on a mirrored item. Once it is copied, it is locked in. You cannot even change the Anoint on a mirrored item. These are extremely rare, and usually what will happen is that there's going to be groups that craft for a perfect item. That then they charge a fee so that you can mirror it, called mirror service. So if you see, like there's a very common shop called TFT, and if you see the account Janubu or something on trade, that's the mirror shop. So everything he's selling is listed for a mirror, and if you want a copy of it, you message for that item, you provide the mirror and the fee, and they give you back a copy. So that's mirror service. Now, we also have essences. Essences are going to be changed, but I'll still explain how they work now because it is relevant to existing crafting. So essences normally are going to be upgraded normal to magic with 1 modifier, and you get to choose that modifier. And then greater essence, magic to rare. So, to give you an example of what was very relevant with essences is that people would buy up a ton of eye level 81 wands. And I think I have a few in my dump tab too, just to give some examples. So you would use your Essence of Electricity, and you would look for +5 to lightning spell skills, is normally what would happen. If you got a prefix, then you can always just quickly AUG it and check what you get. Nothing good here. And then generally at this point, these are just garbage, so you would stop here on all of these. But you could also then use, let's say I had Caster Essence or Lightning Essence. Let's say I did hit the +5, then I could always just try and hit another mod I want with a greater essence. So that's generally how you started crafts in this existing league. But they changed essences, and again, I'll talk about that after. We also have Omens. Omens were used generally for high-end crafting. And I do have an entire video of working on my axe and on my flail. So if you are interested in seeing Omens being used, there's tons of other videos. Like I said, there's hideout warriors that do a lot of this. And there's lots of videos out of people doing high-end crafts with Omens. But in general, the goal was that you would tend to use whittles, dextral erasures, and sinestral erasures, stuff like that. So for example, if I had a whittle and a dextral erasure together, so only removes suffix and removes the lowest level modifier, then it would remove whatever the lowest level modifier here. I believe it would be 15% reduced attribute requirement, or maybe the attack speed. One of those two would be the lowest, and it would only remove from the suffix. And then likewise, sinestral erasure means that I would target the prefix only, and then I would remove this hybrid because I know this is the lowest level E4 hybrid. Now, one thing that seems to have been confusing a lot of people is that when it says level for the whittle, people think tier. So it's like, oh, well, this is a tier 2 modifier. It's going to remove it, right? Wrong. So it goes by the item level of the modifier. And you can see this on PoE2DB. So you can see like, oh, well, tier 2 accuracy is eye level 76. So that's pretty That's still pretty high. And then you look over here with crit chance, tier 1 crit chance is only level 73. And remember, Whittle's wording is it removed the lowest level modifier. So assume that you are towards the end of a craft, you have T2 accuracy. You have T2 accuracy, and you have T1 crit chance. The Whittle will remove your crit chance before the accuracy, which is obviously generally you want crit chance. And the same can apply for, let's say, attack speed. Maybe you want to keep your highest level attack speed. So things like that are to be considered when you are doing these crafts. Now, obviously, if I wanted to remove the accuracy, then I could use, again, that sinestral erasure, so that the whittle will target only prefix, in which case the accuracy would be the lowest, and it would be removed instead of the crit chance. So again, you could combine these omens together by activating multiple omens at once. One thing to note is that greater annulment, removing 2 modifiers per annulment instead of 1, is being removed. And one of the crafting steps, at least that I use this league, was, for example, Orb of Annulment will only remove suffix modifiers and greater annulment together. So what would happen is that you would activate the 2 omens together, and then I could remove 2 suffixes off the axe, and then I could exalt it again to check what I get. And this way I know it's never going to hit the prefixes because I crafted those first, and I could just roll through suffixes. Obviously, as you see here, I have garbage suffixes because I never hit anything good. There's other crafting methods as well. And a lot of weapons, they do start with a fractured crit chance suffix, but again, with a one-of-a-kind axe, I'm not exactly going to gamble fracture that. So that's the Essence's Omens. Last but not least, we have Recomb. I don't know how much this is going to be used in the next league. One of the things about Recomb is that it was, for me, when I was looking at Recomb, it was just difficult to get enough. I don't remember which one it was. I don't remember. It was difficult to get enough bases. So here's going to be, here I'm just going to instantly fail a Recomb. And you can see, oh, well, I have a 1.88% chance to carry my crit chance and my fizz damage over. One thing about Recomb is that it tends to choose the base that has the lowest weight. And so we go back to PoE 2DB and we can see the weights. So now I'm looking at this. T1 fizz percent has a 25 weight. Also, if you mouse over it, it'll give you the chance, meaning it also shows you that on just, if there's an open prefix, open suffix, and you don't have any of the lower level modifiers here, you have roughly 0.05% chance to hit this modifier. So if you go back, I have a whole video about crafting in PoE 2, and like my complaints about crafting in PoE 2. It's this. 1 in 2,000 Chaos Orbs will give you this. Merciless, more or less. Obviously, the math works out different. Depends if you have it on, things like that, and what other mods you have on, because those will remove those weights from the pool when it rolls. Anyway, getting back to the point, Recomb will tend to choose the base that has the lowest weight. The other thing is, if there is a fracture and the base is chosen, it will carry the fracture over. So let's say this Recomb succeeds and it chooses the Swift Spear, the fracture will remain on the spear. So one of the ways that you could that if you had enough bases in this, for example, we get our T1. Generally, I believe that you would tend to start with a fractured crit chance and the T1 fizz percent on the same spear. And then you would get, let's say, T1 flat or something else. I probably would not do it with T1 flat, but you would choose another mod on your other spear and then Recomb that over. And that would already start you off with 3 out of 6 of your finished modifiers. So anyway, let's go ahead and brick these items. End of league brick. And they're gone. Oof. So, in PoE 1, I remember being told that Recomb didn't destroy the items. Here, now they destroy the items, so there's a lot more risk to Recombing. So, That's the current crafting methods. Some of the ways. So generally, you would start with some of these. Maybe fracture a modifier, such as cast speed, because cast speed is a very low weighting on wands. Then you start using omens to finish your craft, things like that. Let's get into new crafting items. So PoE 2 DB also does have these items up. First is that they reworked essences to be, I guess, closer to PoE 1, but still unique. So here we have Lesser Essence of Flames, Greater Essence of Flames, and Perfect Essence of Flames. The Lesser and Greater will both upgrade a magic item to a rare and give it a guaranteed modifier. This is for better or for worse, because the modifiers are not high tier. So it also means that collecting all these... Right now, I don't see anything that will really give you much control over what you get as your first few modifiers on an item. So for example, we were just talking about using lightning essences to go for +5 off a normal wand. It doesn't seem that that will be as common, or that we have much control over that. So we're basically just going to be going in blind for the first 2 modifiers until we make it a rare. Next is we have Perfect Essences. Perfect Essences remove a random modifier and augments a rare item with a new guaranteed modifier. And they show an example of gain extra as fire damage. Now, one of the things that's unclear at this point, and will change the way crafting is done with these new essences, is what item level these new essences have. So remember I talked about whittles and removing the lowest level. We have essences currently in the game, and this one is these two are very important essences. We have Essence of Horror, increased effective socketed ruins and soul cores. This is how you see people with 55% move speed boots right now. And you have Essence of Delirium, upgrades a magic to a rare item with 1 random notable passive as a modifier. And I have one of these in my stash too right now. I have this one here. Allocates battle trance, so you can get a notable as a prefix. These are eye level 1. So both of these essences that I just mentioned are eye level 1. 100% increased effective socket items, level 1. So if these new perfect essences with their unique essence only affix are eye level 1, this means that it's going to be obvious. It's going to be a situation where it's going to be very difficult to whittle with these essences. Also, the other thing is, whittles would obviously only work on chaos orbs themselves, not on essences. So, things to consider with the new essences. We also have veiled modifiers, and if we go back to PoE 1, you'll see that veiled are their own unique pools. They did also show a couple of the unique... What is it? There's too many modifiers. All right, so they have their own unique modifiers for veiled, and they show here. So how it works is that you use a veiled currency item. It will apply a veil onto it, which I believe... So I believe it acts like a Chaos Orb as well. So you'll remove 1 modifier. And then you'll go here to the Abyss and choose to unveil 1 modifier. So it'll give you 3 options and you confirm which one you want. They did show
the power of the souls, and the ominous creature will then retrieve it for you.
They did show a couple of the
mod for crossbows that allows you to place an additional ballista totem. Or this one.
This one. 67 to spirit on a staff. This is kind of wild. So we are expecting that there's going to be some very powerful veiled mods. And in PoE 1, these are eye level 60. All of the unique veiled mods are eye level 60. So they're not the lowest, but still relatively low compared to other T1 modifiers that you would tend to want on gear. So things to consider there as well, which means that if you combine those two together, if we have the perfect essences and the veil both having low eye levels, it means that you will have to finish your craft maybe with one of the gambles. And that leads into Hinakora's. Hinakora's lock is something that will probably be insanely expensive, allows an item to foresee the result of the next currency item used on it. Modifying the item in any way removes the ability to foresee. So, for example, if you use a Hinakora's lock, you'll be able to see, like, let's say a Chaos Orb, oh, I can see that it's going to remove the lightning damage and give me whatever. So, that's where Hinakora's lock comes in, is that you could lock the item, and then and let's say you have 5 out of 6 of your modifiers completed, then you can Hinakora's lock and maybe finish your craft with a perfect essence. Something of that sort. The only thing is, I don't imagine that it would work too well with Veiled, because Veiled has 2 steps. Veiled has 2 steps. There's the actual applying of the orb to the item, which removes 1 affix and then gives it the Veiled mod. And then there's the unveiling, which gives you a 1 out of 3, which you can't reroll. Apparently you can reroll it once, but overall it's going to be pretty limited. Judging by PoE 1, where there's quite a few different affixes, they did mention in PoE 2 that the normal affix pool will be there as well. So Veiled is probably going to be something that you can't reliably lock, but essences should be reliable to lock. And so you can finish your craft with an essence. In that way, if you see that the essence will hit the wrong modifier, you can use a Divine Orb on it and then use a new Hinakora's lock to see what the essence will do now. Assuming that this modifier, two-handed melee weapon or crossbow, gain 25 to 33% of damage as extra fire damage, I also assume that this is going to be either a prefix or a suffix and not both. Generally in PoE, we follow that everything goes into either or, which means that you will know that it's, for example, a prefix essence, so it will always hit prefix. In which case, let's say you have 1 fractured prefix, then you have a 1 out of 2 chance to remove the dud mod, which means that you would only actually need like 2 Hinakoras, right? On average. Obviously, it can be pretty bad, but on average. Or even in a worst case, if you don't have a fracture, then 1 out of 3. But again, Hinakora's locks, I'm assuming, are going to be very expensive because of high-end crafting. Last but not least, and I'll explain more about that previous comment, is also we have Sanctify. Sanctify is a new modifier that is allowed to be used on rare items, specifically rare items, and can overroll the rare item. So let's say I have this T1 Fizz percent, so 179% physical damage. Now I can Sanctify it and reroll it to 1.2x, so 179% becomes 214%. Actually, just under what I have here with the T4 hybrid. This is going to be insane for high-end crafting. I don't want to say RMT, like there's going to be people who can afford it without RMTing, but I can imagine RMTers are salivating over the power spike that they can get over this. And it's not just one modifier. When you sanctify an item, technically every single modifier can overroll by 1.2x. The only thing is, if you fracture the item, remember when I said before about fracturing orbs, fracturing will stop it from being overrolled. So you also have to consider what you're fracturing. Things like plus skills, if you have +5 to skills, that can be rolled to 6. Now you have +6 to skills. Ooh. On scepters, maybe fracturing the... Do I still have in the guild stash? Maybe fracturing the plus minion skills because it's locked at 4 is the max anyway. To be determined. But overall, this is going to be interesting because sanctifying also stops it from being crafted on. Can't mirror it, can't craft on it further. So for super, super high-end crafting, you're probably going to see people using locks and sanctifying. And then they see, oh, will my sanctify overroll the mods I really want to a high percent? If so, complete it. If not, disable the omen, div it, relock it, and repeat until you get your result that you want. Keep in mind that divining items is incredibly expensive. even without sanctifying. So this is not a great example because there's not too many mods in range. But let's say that you have, let's just say you have 6 options for every single, like, let's say it's 1 to 6 for every single mod. This means that you have a 1 out of, you would have 6 to the 6. You have 46,000 possibilities. You have 6 options for every mod. Did I do that right? Seems wrong. But I believe that is correct. You would have 46,000 outcomes. In which case you have 1 out of 46,000. This is your rough chance to hit a perfect roll on 1 through 6. To roll 6, 6, 6, 6, 6 on everything. So obviously you can imagine that with sanctifying and trying to hit 1.2x on everything is not going to be a feasible thing, but there's still going to be people who are trying to go for very high-end items where sanctifying might be one of the plays. The other thing is it would still use a lock. Presumably can still see the outcome of a corruption. So you can see if you're going to get an extra socket or something. And to give you some examples, here's one Chinese character. And you can see that they have a mirror tier spear and it is corrupted. So one of the things is I spoke about mirror service earlier in this video. Mirror service is when you pay a fee and you give a mirror over, you pay a fee, and they give you a copy of their item back. And the reason for this is because it takes quite a bit to actually craft these mirror items. So they're funding their crafts by charging that fee. There are people out there that will take these mirror tier items and corrupt them or, rework them or whatever. So there's actually a market for selling originals. So the original version, which means that it could be whoever's buying it, either again like this, could be corrupting it and going for very, very high tier items that only, because you can't mirror it after because it's corrupted, can't be mirrored after, only they get to use, or they're going to be offering copies of their own and taking the risk that they might not get any further copies. So some of the spears that I've seen have gone for like 8 to 15 mirrors in terms of originals. And as you can see here, this is just one character that I had a link to already. So for example, this is a basically perfect helmet and corrupted to perfect spirit roll. This is a perfect spear corrupted to perfect crit damage roll. And keep in mind, this roll is 20 to 30, so there's 11. Even when you roll spirit, you're not guaranteed 30. And same here, it's 10 to 15% on the crit damage bonus. Here you have a perfect ring that also has a 28% damage corrupt, rolls 20 to 30. So again, to roll these, you probably have to go through multiple... this guy probably had to go through multiple originals. So mirror tier originals, and go through a lot of bricks. Last time I checked his profile, he did have a better spear in the second slot, but it seems that he replaced it with something else. Anyway, that's not really the point, but it is to say that people might be wondering why is Hinakora's like relevant, or why is Sanctifying relevant. It is for the ultra high-end players that are already running like mirror gear everywhere, or originals even, and corrupting them, where Sanctifying might provide better value than trying to corrupt it for, let's say, another socket. So that more or less covers, I believe, all of the existing... Oh, wait, good point. Last thing, we have perfect orbs. We have greater and perfect orbs. These give a minimum item level. So remember I was talking about item level. These give a minimum item level. Perfect orbs give a minimum eye level 50 when used, which means that, let's say I Chaos Orb a bow. If it rolls flat physical, it will never roll below tier 3 for flat physical. So eye level 2, 13, 21, 29, 36, 46, all of these are not in the pool anymore. This heavily increases your chance to hit high tier, like let's say Fizz percent, because as you can see here, you're removing all these junk mods with very high weighting, and you're keeping low weighting mods. So when you roll that Fizz percent, it's a lot more likely that it's going to roll to T1 without the junk modifiers weighing in. And so in this way, we are removing a ton of the junk modifiers. Here's another example. So, you know, all accuracy, all these low rolled accuracies out of the pool. 1000 weighting dex rolls here. Like, so all of this gets removed out of the pool when you're using one of those perfect orbs. There are perfect transmutes. Yeah, perfect transmutes, perfect augs, perfect regals, perfect exalts, and perfect chaos orbs. They did mention that a perfect chaos orb is more rare than a divine orb. So to be determined how expensive these orbs are going to be. Perfect chaos are going to be used a lot for high-end crafting, obviously, for omen crafting. And I can imagine that they will go for a good chunk because it will save you so much on omens because so much of the junk is removed. In which case, crafts are going to be finished in a fraction of the number of omens now than they were in 0.2 or especially 0.1 where we didn't even have fractures. So now we can tend to finish crafts way quicker, which is going to be interesting to see. So, let me know down in the comments. Did you have any thoughts on crafting anything? What steps are you planning on taking when you're crafting? Are you going to start with, let's say, a suffix fracture on a quiver, a prefix fracture, whatever? Let me know down in the comments. Check out my other 0.3 prep videos. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.